Okay, what I'm doing is sectionally warping a union, but using the built-in rack that they have. I don't normally do this. I think I've done it maybe 2 or 3 times in my life. Uh, it's a lot easier if you use a standalone rack that will hold 24 spools that will sit back a ways. It's easier to keep an eye on things. Now, the Union and the Orco work very much the same, except that the Orco has got a board back here with little eyelets in it that feed the warp up. The Union has this other contraption, but they both got this spiky arrangement down below where the spools sit. And it's a real ankle biter. If you go by them, you'll scratch yourself on them all the time. But it'll hold 24 spools, and it's nice in that it's self-contained. But if you do any amount of weaving, you really want to use a spool rack, especially like here where I'm dealing with like some of these were full spools, but some are small. Like now this one is getting really low, and I'll switch it before I start winding on the next section, because you got this guide here that has 24 holes in it, and you just keep sliding that down to each section. But I try to avoid having knots in the run, so I'll pull, I think I'll pull all 5 of those little spools off. I got a bunch more of them, and put a new batch on. I'm going 50 turns in 13 sections, and like I said, there's 24 strings in each section. But this, a lot of times, this is what gets people confused, is trying to get warp on, and I've showed you how to do it with a warping rack. But like I say, the Union and the Orco, which are the most common looms and a good loom to start on, have a rack built into them. And it does work. It's just that you have to keep your eye on what's going on up here, but also keep an eye down here. Because if something gets tangled or a thread gets underneath the spool, if you feel any sudden resistance, you got to stop cranking or you'll break a string. And you could really screw it up. But that's where it's easier if it's back ways. But this does work. It's a kind of a nice feature, except for the ankle biting thing. But now all I have to do is move this down to the next section, tie it on, and I put new leader ropes. And now when I put these ropes on, the original ones that were on here were very short. I use them fairly long so that I'm able to weave up to the warp comes right up to the pedals. It just saves you a little warp. Because now what I got to do is, after I get this all wound on, I got to tie it to the old ends and then pull it through. And then I'm going to make a little bit of a change, but basically that's what you're doing. It's just, if you have an empty loom, it's a real hassle, if there's no string in the heddles. But if you already have it strung, it's easy enough to tie on. Just takes a little time. I did Ma's yesterday. I think it took, hers is the Orco, but very similar. I think it took like 4 hours to do it. The winding on is the easy part, except that you have to pay a lot of attention. And I always try to do it when there aren't people around, because you're counting. You have to count as you're winding this on, and then at the same time watch very closely what the spools are doing. And a lot of times people come up and they want to talk to you. They stare at them spools moving. And that's a little bit of a problem with this type of a rack. Like, say, this particular spool, I can bend that peg a little. It doesn't rotate, but it feeds off it. It just feeds straight off without spinning the spool. I really like to be able to see the spools moving, so you know that it's feeding off of them. That's where that independent standalone rack is a lot nicer. But you can get by with these. They do work. It's just they're prone to disasters. But I know my sister's got some shows coming up. I wasn't going to warp this one. I was going to warp my old one, but she's short on inventory, so I figured, well, I better rake some rugs quick. And I have some navy blue stuff, some wool that I wanted to do, so I put the navy blue warp on. And, you know, that's kind of a killer for somebody just starting out, in that a full spool, like this is about a half spool here. A full spool costs you like $6 or $7 or more, you know, and you got to have 24 of them to do it this method. There are ways around it, you know, but if you're going to do any amount of weaving, you really got to do it on the 24 in a section. But I thought I'd show you because I don't think anybody ever does this. Like I say, I've done it 2 or 3 times, but normally I use that spool rack. Just works a lot better. Though these do work, and it comes on your machine. These are the thing, you got to have this warp guide, just a little galvanized tin thing bent with 24 holes in it. But you do need one of them, and they are available. If one doesn't come with the loom, it should, but if it doesn't, they are available from any decent weaving supply outfit. You know, they're just called a warp guide. You could make one up, but you can't have too sharp an edge in there because these strings, as they come up, they make quite an angle there. That's where you do have to watch in case there's any knots or anything in the warp. They can get caught in here and cut. So you got to watch for wiggling. But I'll get her warped up yet. Get her tied on and do some weaving. If you hear that click clopping, the horse decided now is a good time to go to the pasture. But get this baby set up and get some weaving done. But there's a change we're going to make. Like I say, well, I'll go into that later. But this is at the moment the normal threading pattern that they use, but I will be double slaying it, and I'll show you a little bit of that, and I'll show you why, but that'll be a different video.